Hi, this is Willie Nelson from NORML. For 30 years, NORML has provided a voice for the millions of Americans who smoke marijuana responsibly. More than 500,000 Americans are arrested each year for smoking pot. These are ordinary citizens like you and me, whose lives and careers are being needlessly destroyed. To learn how you can help, contact NORML at www.norml.org or call toll-free at 888-67-NORML.
And distributed by the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws in Washington, D.C. This is your daily audio stash, the growing truth about cannabis. Welcome to the most popular audio podcast regarding marijuana in all of America and all the world, featuring interviews with scientists, politicians, doctors, prohibition policy activists, regular cannabis consumers, musicians, and NORML staff and NORML's board of directors, along with music and comedy no other podcast can offer. You can always find out more about the show at our website, normalaudiostash.com. We're ending marijuana prohibition with education, one listener at a time. Welcome back to the Audio Stash. Today, I'm your host, Chris Goldstein. Take a moment to join us at NORML to end marijuana prohibition in America. Just visit NORML.org. First up today, folks, we have an important news focus interview. It's been a very busy week in marijuana-related news, and this one's been getting a lot of attention in Colorado. Lenny Freeling is a criminal defense attorney in the Boulder area of Colorado and a member of the NORML Legal Committee. Until this week, Lenny also served as an associate municipal judge in somewhat rural Lafayette, Colorado. This week, however, Lenny resigned in protest of the city of Lafayette looking to increase minor marijuana possession penalties from $100, and that's the state norm there in Colorado, to $1,000 locally. Lenny's resignation has attracted a lot of attention to that proposed ordinance in Lafayette, and it's put Lenny in the spotlight of local media. So it's wonderful to welcome Lenny Freeling to the show today amidst a very busy schedule this week for him. Lenny, welcome here to the Audio Stash today.
Good morning, Chris.
A very cold morning here on the East Coast today. Lenny, thanks again for taking time to speak with us. First, let's talk about your work as a criminal defense attorney, which is how you became an associate judge in the first place. So what led to you pursuing this as a career, and how did you end up there in Colorado?
When I graduated Rutgers in 1975 and was in Colorado with a U-Haul 6 weeks later. I ended up opening my own practice and trying out a general practice of law, and discovered after a few years that I hated all of it, except criminal defense, which I loved. So in 1986, I stopped doing everything else and became 100% criminal defense attorney. And I've been doing that ever since, and pretty much having a great time with it.
And Lenny, what kinds of cases are usually coming your way there in the Boulder area?
Well, I joke with people that I do traffic to treason. I do everything from a driving failure to signal case right up to vehicular homicide, racketeering. I try to stick to the state courts. I don't have fun in federal court, although certainly other members of the NORML Legal Committee are wonderful in federal court. It's not my first choice. So I cover the board.
Now, Lenny, up until this week, you were serving as an associate municipal court judge there in Lafayette, Colorado. Now, in rural areas, especially in Colorado, municipal judges are working a little differently. So tell us about the role of a municipal court judge there.
My particular role was the backup guy. So I would only sit when the real judge, the regular judge, was either on vacation or had a conflict of interest. And in fact, I had not been called in quite some time. I found out that they brought in an additional associate judge. The city of Lafayette was misled, I think, the press yesterday, but then by the end of the day cleared it up. This morning's local paper had the main judge honestly describing my relationship with the city. So the gesture was more spiritual, figurative than something that would hurt my income. On the other hand, I did change my website to former judge from associate judge. Whether they ever would have called me again or not, who knows? Colorado is, as far as I know, the leading state in the United States for what's called home rule. So a home rule city in Colorado, and they're not all home rule cities, have more power to legislate than cities in the rest of the country. So municipal court judges in a home rule city can actually end up hearing quite a wide variety of offenses. And that was the kind of cases that I would typically hear would be everything from traffic to assault to shoplifting, and that varies. And I never figured out how a police officer could decide whether to write a ticket into a municipal court or into the county court because they have overlapping jurisdiction.
That's very interesting. So, Lenny, being a municipal judge there in Colorado, you could see anything from a traffic stuff to serious violent crime.
Every once in a while, I'd get an assault that I was surprised was in the municipal court. And as you know, when a person's standing there looking up at some guy wearing the black muumuu of justice, whether it's a speeding ticket or an assault or shoplifting, they think it's serious. So I think that the judge is doing a great disservice if they don't treat every case as serious. And that's true of criminal defense also. When I'm dealing with somebody on a 4-point careless driving ticket, they're just about as upset as somebody who's looking at potential prison.
And having served as a judge, Lenny, tell us what this experience is like, going from citizen to criminal defense attorney to actually hearing and deciding on cases in a courtroom.
It was a fantastic learning experience. I feared going into it that I wouldn't be able to appropriately punish people, and I found that when I saw somebody that I thought had done something bad, I had no problem handing out what I thought were pretty significant punishments. When I heard a speeding ticket sentencing, a guy going 90 miles an hour down a highway where we have a lot of deaths with a 4-page motor vehicle history of speeding, I hammered him. I felt good about it. On the other hand, when I heard a trial of a guy that was caught in one of our local parks with a brown paper bag sitting on the bench next to him, which turned out to have some cannabis in it, I found him not guilty. And even the officer understood it and had no problem with it because there was no evidence that it was his brown paper bag, that he knew what was in it. So it covered the gamut. I crafted some creative sentences that I recently found out have been adopted by at least one other jurisdiction. That was in-home detention. I was kind of stumped when we had kids come into court with shoplifting. I'd have 11 and 12-year-olds on shoplifting charges, and I invented a sentence. They would show up with their parents, and the sentence that I invented was what I called in-home community service, where I empowered the parents. I would sentence the child to, say, 30 hours of community service to be directed by the parent. And at the end of the month, the parent would send me a letter, and it was pass-fail. So if the child didn't do what the parent said, for the last half hour, they got no credit, and I would double it. My theory was that it empowered the parent, and the parent was the one that knew best what the child needed to be doing, whether it was their homework or taking out the garbage. And I don't know of a single one where the parent wrote in and said they flunked their community service, you need to double it. I'm proud of that.
Now, Lenny, you resigned your municipal court judgeship this week in protest of the city of Lafayette looking to increase their marijuana possession penalties. So, Lenny, tell us a bit about what's happening there.
The present municipal ordinance is up to a $100 fine for possession under an ounce or possession of paraphernalia. That is the same as the Colorado state law. The new ordinance, which passed a first reading and comes up for a final reading on the 20th, this coming Tuesday, is proposing a maximum 1 year in the county jail and a maximum $1,000 fine. Because of my letter, and as you know, this isn't about me, this is about the ordinance, this is about legalization. Because of the attention that letter has gotten, there's going to be, I believe, a pretty significant opposition appearing at the city council meeting. SAFER, which is very active in Colorado, is now involved. I heard yesterday, to my amazement, that the ACLU is jumping on board, opposing the ordinance. So my fantasy is that, worst case, it'll bring more needed attention to an important issue, something that affects a lot of people. And on the more positive side, perhaps it'll get enough attention to get us more votes against the ordinance. Right now we have one city council person voting against the ordinance.
And this has been getting a lot of attention in Colorado. I know the papers and TV stations have been covering this extensively. So just to remind our listeners, the city of Denver passed a safer marijuana alcohol equalization initiative, and the statewide safer ballot measure garnered 44% of a yes vote in 2006. So, Lenny, I have to ask why the city is even considering this increase in a place that seems to support safer type equalization for pot.
As I understand it, the proposal was championed by the judge, it's not a full-time judge, but by the leading judge in Lafayette, who believes that he needs more sentencing range for what he referred to as aggravated or repeat offenders. My position is there is no such thing as an aggravated possession of under an ounce of cannabis. If the person is committing another crime at the same time, which is usually the case when they get into court, then look at the real crime that they're committing, whether it's speeding or assault, which, as you know, is quite unusual. But look at the real crime and punish that appropriately. Personally, if somebody is caught possessing under an ounce of pot for the 50th time, $100 fine is way more than adequate, and it shouldn't have been against the law to begin with. I happen to like the judge. We just disagree on this issue.
And if that statewide SAFER initiative, and when we talk about SAFER, folks, it's an organization. You can visit them online at saferchoice.org. But if the statewide SAFER initiative could be passed there in Colorado, do you think that would deter individual cities from trying to pass these really ridiculous increases to simple possession fines locally?
It would have some impact. And sadly, I think that the change ultimately will not come because people become more educated to the real issue. I think it will come financially because people get tired of building prison beds. They get tired of not having room in county jails for drunk drivers in serious cases. And they just prioritize and decide that punishing pot smokers is something that's just not a priority.
And Lenny, one final question for you today. As a criminal defense attorney, how have you personally seen marijuana prohibition negatively impacting marijuana smokers and other citizens there?
The biggest problems I see in Boulder County have to do with students at the University of Colorado, where the university is treating marijuana similarly to alcohol, and because over the years they have had a problem with alcohol, they do things like give somebody what they call an alcohol or pot strike if an RA in a dorm thinks he or she smells smoke in the dorm room. They don't care which roommate was or was not smoking. And you end up with somebody with 2 or 3 pot strikes, suspension or suspension in abeyance. So that's where I really see more of the isolated cannabis possession being a huge problem. In the real world, it just seems to come up more in conjunction with something else. Somebody driving badly, or even a broken tail light, and then when they get pulled over, there's a baggie on the dashboard and a glass pipe on the console of the car. Well, that's petty offense stupid. It should be legal, but it's not. And those are more the bottom end of the cases I see. In general, and this I'm sure doesn't go for all officers, in general, they know they have better things to do than write people up for smoking a joint. They're just not much interested in that. On the other hand, if you embarrass them into it, they won't. What I've seen quite a number of times is when somebody is caught smoking a joint and not doing anything else wrong. It's not unusual to have an officer take the joint away. You can guess what they do with it. Of course they flush it down the toilet rather than write it up. Although I did have a mountain case, not Boulder County, one of the mountain counties, where my client ended up in a snowbank because he couldn't decide left or right at the fork, and they searched his trunk, possibly legally, and according to the report, found 3 ounces of pot. And my client said to me, I don't think it helps my case, and I don't know that we need to make a big deal about it, but I had 6 ounces in the trunk. And he just said he wasn't telling me they stole my pot and let's go after him and it helps my case. He had no motivation to lie to me, and he realized he was better off with the smaller quantity. That's obscene. That's just obscene.
Well, Lenny, I really want to thank you today for joining us here on NORML's Daily Audio Stash to discuss your resignation there in Colorado, and of course we wish you the best there as you continue your work as a criminal defense attorney and a member of the NORML Legal Committee.
My pleasure, Chris. Thank you very much.
And thanks again, Lenny. Lenny Freeling is a criminal defense attorney in the Boulder area of Colorado. He resigned from his post in Lafayette City as an associate municipal court judge this week in protest over proposed local increased fines for simple marijuana possession. We have links to Lenny's homepage on our website today at normalaudiostash.com.
Yeah, come on in here, honey. How am I doing? Well, now you can't judge a honey by looking at the bee. You can't judge an apple by looking at the tree. You can't judge a daughter by looking at her mother. But you can't judge a book by looking at the cover. Come on, can't you see? Well, baby, you misjudged me. Well, I might look like a farmer, but I'm a lover. Can't judge a book by looking at the cover. Come on. Come on up here closer. Well, now you can't judge sugar by looking at the cane. You can't judge a woman by looking at her man. You can't judge a sister by looking at her brother. Well, you can't judge a book by looking at the cover. Come on, can't you see? Oh, baby, you misjudged me. Well, I might look like a farmer, but I'm a lover. Can't judge a book by looking at the cover. Come on, darling. can't judge right by looking at the wrong. You can't judge one by looking at the other. Yeah, you can't judge a book by looking at the cover. Come on, can't you see? Oh, baby, you misjudge me. Well, I might look like a farmer, but I'm a lover. Can't judge a book by looking at the cover. Can't judge that book. No, better not.
That was some fine music found at podshow.com. We have links to all the artists at normalaudiostash.com.
Hi, this is Keith Stropp, founder of the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, also known as NORML. When I founded the organization in 1970 to create a national discussion on the need to legalize marijuana for responsible adult use, no one honestly believed that 36 years later, marijuana would still be an illegal and untaxed commodity. However, since NORML began this important advocacy effort, 12 states have decriminalized the possession of marijuana, and 11 states have passed medical marijuana laws or voter initiatives, meaning that over one-third of the American population lives in a state or municipality that has reformed their marijuana laws. Isn't it time that Congress step in and pass national legislation to reform marijuana laws? Let's finish the job of legalizing marijuana once and for all by you and your like-minded friends joining and supporting NORML's long-standing advocacy. You can learn more about NORML's marijuana law reform efforts or become an active supporter by calling toll-free 888-67-NORML or by visiting www.normal.org.
Next up on the Audio Stash today, we're going to showcase a San Francisco comic who got in touch with us up on MySpace. He's got a couple of pot jokes here today, along with a couple of jokes that I found really funny about feline existentialism. It has been a heavy week of snow here on the East Coast and a heavy week in news, marijuana-related, here on the Audio Stash. Make sure you tune in every day at normalaudiostash.com or up on iTunes. But without ado, here's Brian Mallow from ButSeriously.com.
There are a lot of myths about drugs. A lot of people think marijuana affects your perception of time. That is not true. Marijuana does not affect your perception of time. What it does is it actually alters the space-time continuum. It changes reality, not your perception. But it does affect your memory. That's not a myth. There's actually a brain hormone called vasopressin, and it's associated with memory. And marijuana use depletes the vasopressin levels in your brain. And that results in those memory lapses, which I like to call potholes. Sometimes you haven't seen someone in a while, you're like, dude. Sorry, pothole. I think pot should be legal, though, of all the drugs. Certainly, yeah. I think there's a drug problem in America, but we should treat it as a health issue, not a criminal issue. Because smoking a joint is not a crime. How can it even be a crime? Who's the victim? The other night I said that, and a woman goes, "You're the victim." I'm the victim. Okay, well, what if I don't press charges? Can I go now? It's okay, officer. I decided not to press charges. I'm going to let myself off with a warning. And now a word about feline existentialism. I know we humans have a tendency to anthropomorphize, to project our feelings and attributes upon other creatures, even inanimate objects. But having said that, I still believe cats are very profound creatures and more philosophically oriented than we ever give them credit for being. For instance, the other day, my cat, Damien, he's the anti-cat. Damien was in a funk. He was moping around the apartment. He walked out onto the patio, came back in, wandered into the kitchen, stirred his food around a little. Then he came over, rubbed up against my legs, looked up at me with these hopeful eyes, and gave out this plaintive meow. Meow. Which I think could be interpreted literally. I think he was saying, meow. I hurt. Life is painful and meaningless, all hairballs and tapeworms. Meow, he said. I'm itchy and scratchy and neutered and dry food sucks. Meow, he cried. Meow, why was I created if only to endure this? Life is a litter box and it needs to be changed. Meow, he said. And with those simple words, I think he was trying to express a very complex emotion, despite having a limited vocabulary and no concept of syntax. He's followed in the footsteps of Jean-Paul Sartre, even though he has twice as many feet. Damien, the first feline existentialist, capable of silencing roomfuls of people. And don't think I don't know it.
That's Brian Mallow there. He let us have access to that comedy for our podcast today. Brian can be found up on MySpace as well, and he's from ButSeriously.com. We have links to both of those pages up on our website today at NORMLAudiostash.com.
755,000. That is a big number to be sure, but do you know what this number represents? It signifies the total number of citizens in America arrested on marijuana charges in 2004. That's right. 755,000 of your fellow citizens were arrested on marijuana charges. That's an arrest every 40 seconds. And 9 out of 10 of those arrested are for possession-only charges. Does continuing marijuana prohibition make sense to you? It certainly does not to the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws and its members. I'm NORML's Executive Director, Alan St. Pierre, and if you too think that it is high time to end marijuana prohibition and replace it with a tax and regulate policy, please join and support NORML's 36-year legislative efforts to reform our country's misguided marijuana laws. You can learn more about NORML or become an active supporter by calling toll-free 888-67-NORML, N-O-R-M-L, or by visiting us on the web at NORML, NORML.org.
Listening to NORML's Daily Audio Stash, the growing truth about cannabis. Make sure you visit our website at NORMLAudiostash.com. That's NORMLAudiostash.com for more information about every day's show. I'm your host, Chris Goldstein. Thanks for listening today. See you at 4:20 tomorrow. Podcasting technology of NORML is made possible by Red Aphid Interactive Media. More information at redapphid.com.